Welcome to our webinar on escaping PoC purgatory. I hope everyone appreciated us sort of looking at it as a troublesome place to be, stuck in a proof of concept. So today there's going to be two of us presenting. There is going to be myself, and there's going to be Guillaume Taccoen, who can correct the pronunciation of his name in a moment. Apologies for that, Guillaume. A quick introduction from me though. So I'm Breen from Active. I'm responsible for partnerships and business development. I've got quite a long background in the VR industry. I started the European, at least, Vive team in 2015. Worked across all various sectors of that. I've been working with Active now for around a year. And everything we do is to support scaling companies and their virtual training. Within Active, and as actually part of our partnership program, we work very closely with partners across different countries, different industries. And one of those partners we work most closely with is actually the OnX Group, which is why we're bringing this webinar today. So we're doing it ourselves, but also with a partner. So without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to my co-presenter, Guillaume, who will take you further.
Thank you, Graham. No mistake on the pronunciation of my name. So my name is Guillaume Taccoen. So I'm the director of the XR activity of OnX. We're a team that specializes in VR development for the industry and VR development to scale. So we've been doing that for approximately 8 to 10 years. Started from the very beginning of VR, and now we specialize really in scaling. And we work very closely, as you mentioned, Graham, with Active, and we are more an integrator. So our position is to be very close to our customers on the field and provide solutions that are adapted to their needs. And so it's good to see so many people today connected. I believe that going to scale with virtual reality is really the topic, the ongoing topic. Because we know that the technology is working today, and we've been seeing quite a few teams stuck in a state that they actually repeat a proof of concept. They are moving from one proof of concept to the other, and struggling to move forward and to scale, to go from 10 people to deployment to 1,000 people deployment. So first, what is PoC? PoC is a proof of concept, and PoC is a process that has proven its approach for the offer and technology management area, meaning that the usual goal of PoCs is to prove the feasibility of a concept. So the KPIs measured to the KPIs of a PoC project are usually technical KPIs. And it concerns mainly feasibility. We think about something, is it feasible and technically feasible? Do we have any technological lockout or impossibility? And this is usually the goal of a PoC project, is to show that the technology can do it. Does it work with the specification? So a lot of companies are using PoCs to show that it's working. To show that it's working. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Graham. So what is really the problem is that we're using a process or methodology that is not adapted to check and to progress in the questions related to deployment and to scaling. Actually, we can see it. We have approximately 1 out of 10 decision makers within the industry saying that they move from PoCs to enterprise-wide scale project, meaning that 1 out of 10 people move from PoC, from proof of concept, to scaling their project. So PoC is a way to evaluate technology, but the way it's done, usually the way the PoC projects are designed, it does not contribute to define how it can contribute to go from 1 to 10 sites, for example, from 1 to 10 factories, or to go from 20 users to 2,000 users, as for example. And this is a clear, say, a drawback of this methodology, is that it usually progress well on the technological side, but as it doesn't give progress on the business side, on the business KPI side, usually PoCs gets less and less of executive support, meaning that the focus is less and less on the project, and then project that gets less executive sponsorship gets forgotten or gets fewer chance to be deployed at scale. So this really the problem, is that PoC process is not adapted to the constraint of defining what is needed to go to scale.
Exactly. Thank you, Guillaume. It's quite an interesting one because PoCs were very relevant in the early days of VR, where the technology needed proving. But by and large, at the moment, it's actually a proven technology. The functionality, the benefits, they're proven already. So we prefer to look at it actually, and working with customers, rather than a proof of concept to prove something that's already proven, is actually look at it as a way of embracing change management within your organization. And that falls into three key parts. Part one is people. So if you're going to integrate VR training in an organization, there's a few key elements you need to take into account. And the stakeholders in there aren't just the executive level, but you need the executive level buy-in from very early on, understanding why you're doing this technology, why you're embracing it, and what you're actually trying to achieve. You're trying to replace actually existing processes and existing tools. But it's not just the executive level that you need to buy in from. You actually need people who are going to be using the technology. You need their buy-in. So people will feel threatened by it, whether that's people who are involved in training. All of a sudden, a new tool coming along that they may feel could put them out of a job, but actually in many ways, it's going to help them. It's going to make them more effective. And if you embrace that and get them to buy in from the start, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier going forwards. So the second part of that, the second part of the change is actually the processes. So it's really sort of taking a step back and looking at what processes are you trying to train people to work on, and how are people behaving in there? How are they training for that currently? And how could that be different? How could that be done? What core skills are you trying to communicate across? Now, you're not, just because you're deploying VR training, you're not going to change everything immediately. So we've been talking quite a bit, myself and Guillaume, really about it's evolutions rather than revolution here. It's small steps, but achievable steps. So set realistic goals. You're not going to change the world immediately, but by setting small realistic goals, you can scale actually to a successful rollout of VR. And a key part of that then is tools. And this is partially where myself and InnoActive come in our day job. But even beyond us, actually, it's crucial that you're using correct tools, ones that will allow you to build a scalable environment in VR. And when I say scalable, I mean tools that will give you flexibility in terms of maintaining your software, but also ones that will allow you to build your software flexibly. When we built this presentation, we, for example, didn't build a separate template for each slide. We used a tool that was PowerPoint, which gave us a great template. And for example, the creator that I'll talk about later, but it offers exactly that. It allows you to template your VR training, so you can already do a lot of the base work for yourself. We also are very keen on embracing a low-code environment. Developers are crucial, that's clear, but it's great to have the training managers involved too. And by having them involved, getting them to develop, but in a low-code environment, is actually getting them involved from the step one, and that comes back to the first part of this slide, the people. So they'll be involved right the way through creating training, because it's actually a far more simplified way of developing training in a low-code environment that actually you don't need to be a hardcore programmer, which I'm not, but I can build VR training, for example. So as part of that change from proof of concept, it's really leaving that and thinking what you're really trying to achieve here is to prove value, to prove business goals, to achieve business goals. And I guess it's the $1 million question that all executive stakeholders will have. What's the return on investment? Why should I make this investment in VR training? And what is the return? So it's really important to have a completely bulletproof plan around that. And that's looking at, okay, so what are you doing today? And what is training today? And what would training be in virtual reality? What are the costs? But also not just the costs, what are the outcomes too? How long does it take to train someone? How efficiently can they be trained? How is their memory retention? So that's all part of a decent ROI. And a secondary element to that that a lot of people sometimes ignore is that a well-trained worker is also often a motivated worker and someone who will stay with a company. So actually things such as employee retention also come into that return of investment by investing in a decent VR rollout for a training program. So it's quantifiable benefits. It always comes back to numbers when justifying things upwards. So always look at how you can quantify those gains. And I've mentioned a couple of the methods there. That can be, yes, cost of training, time it takes to train, efficiency of training, but as I mentioned, employee turnover. There's a range of benefits, and you've got to look within your organization at the metrics that actually people are really judging you by. And when working with partners, internal and external, look for those who have experience to lower the risks. And what we mean with this is actually they'll have already gone through some of the challenges, and it's probably the same challenges that if you were to embrace the whole PoC methodology, you would probably learn yourself, but you'd lose a year. So far better actually work with people who've already embraced these challenges, who've already made these learnings, because you're lowering your risks yourself. So it comes into some core best practices in that sense, and we've got them listed out here. This isn't rocket science, and yet a lot of companies we see move ahead without doing exactly these. So engage the executives from early on and get them to understand why you're taking on this project, so in securing their sponsorship. It's really focusing on the deliverable to the P&L. What is the monetary saving and the dollar, euro, pound impact of introducing VR training, and how does that impact the KPIs of the business? In terms of where do you start? It's one of the classic questions we have actually is I'm looking at work building VR training, but I have no idea where to start. We always recommend, if you look at, I guess it'd be called the, I don't want to use the term low-hanging fruits, the easy wins. It's the things that are very easy to prove the benefits of to stakeholders. And what I mean in that are things such as very repeatable processes, very standardized processes where you've got a very defined input, output, and what you expect the employee to gain from that. And some of those, well, they can, it's completely, that varies from industry to industry, whether that's down the start of a production line, whether that's health and safety. But all companies have a set of standardized processes where you want to give an exactly identical training experience to each of your employees. So look at repeatable use cases, because then it will allow you to scale. And the final one we've got here is be pragmatic. Actually, don't think you're going to change everything now, but be pragmatic, aim at the wins you can achieve, and focus on them. So I'm going to pass you here back to Guillaume, who will talk you through some of the decisions you're going to have to make now.
Exactly. Thank you, Graham. Actually, we see a lot of companies moving forward without being knowing that they need to take big decisions. And the first big decision you need to make is to know if your company needs to become a VR editor or not. Meaning that your company is in the chain of value is probably having key activities which are crucial to their strategy for their added value. And some others are not. Some others are not, so they would be subcontracted. So when you start this approach of proof of value, when you switch from proof of concept to proof of value, you can start with the first question: do we need to become VR editor? Is the VR edition activity a crucial part of the business? Maybe not now, but maybe tomorrow, or in 1 year, or in 10 years. Because this will define very clearly if you need to internalize this activity or if you need to externalize. For sure, when you start at the beginning, you need to start with experts. So either acquire them, either outsource something. But the really key to the start is to follow a make or buy process. Make or buy process is a process that is usually done in the industry to understand if it's cheaper to do it internally or to do it externally, depending on the competencies you need to ramp up, depending on the criticality of the business, and so on and so on. And that's, I think, a very good practice to start with this make or buy study. Second is to when you know if you do it internally or externally, you need to qualify your technologies, the technology you will use, the tools, softwares, but also the subcontractors based on scaling constraints criteria. Don't forget the scaling constraints criteria, meaning that if you plan, if your business at scale is to deploy VR on 100 people or 1,000 people, you need to think about it and take the constraint up front. And prioritize this constraint, scaling constraint, on technological constraints or marketing constraints, because it will be the key in the next steps of your project. And last but not least, look where it's been done before and how it's been done before. I believe that in the last 2 years, we can see a lot of VR deployed in big companies, big industrial companies, where they take a lot of benefit out of it. They find a return on invest, but they get also a lot of experience about it. So don't go up front on the experience curve by yourself. You can easily take advantage of what has been done before in the same sectors. So as best practices, the first best practice is to find experts. There's no need to redo what they've been doing before, and find experts that are within your segment, within your area of activity. Second is to be honest and to be clear with the scaling goals. No need to plan for 10,000 people deployment if your team will be at the end maximum 100. But be honest also, if your goal is to do marketing and shiny things, that's very possible also and respectable. But if your goal is to show that your company is doing VR for marketing reasons, that's very fine, but you will not need scaling. You just need to show nice things, and it will not need to go at scale. And last point about scaling is to be ambitious. Be ambitious on quality. Be very ambitious on quality on your proof of value. Be very ambitious on the quality. Can be on the 3D quality, can be on the user experience quality, because of your first users in the proof of value will be the key to refine your return on investment. The goal of your proof of value is to validate your hypothesis about deployment, about change management, and your first users are key to that. And while you are ambitious on quality, you need to be driven by actions, driven by, I would say, speed, because I think in average, there's 5 to 10 Industry 4.0 initiatives in every company. And the first that brings the proof that it will bring value will get the budget. So get a lot of attention on speed on your proof of value, because budget are not extendable, especially in the context that we know today. So while you are ambitious on the quality, you need to be driven by speed so that you can move forward fast and convince your executives very fast. And that's actually what's been happening in few of the experience that we have. And I will hand over to Graham to describe this experience of successful rollout of virtual reality. Up to you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I'll talk you through two examples actually of companies, customers that we work with, who really stand as sort of shining beacons of those who've embraced a lot of these learnings and have moved beyond the proof of concept phase, and not just beyond, but well beyond. Volkswagen was a very early adopter of VR in that they were engaged early. And interestingly, they were involved in proof of concept, but when proof of concept was relevant, when VR wasn't proven tech. But then how have they taken it and how have they scaled it? They've looked at their processes, but for them, the key thing is they're like many large companies operating across a lot of markets. It doesn't matter where in the world they produce something, it needs to be of the same quality. It needs to be exactly the same standardization of processes, because their brand is really relying on that. So for them, the training and the use of VR was kind of a no-brainer. So when scaling it, they've looked at what tools can they use in order to really sort of drive that. One of them that they're using is the creator, the interactive creator, and that allows them to have a standardized template actually that they can build their training from. And when I say a standardized template, what that has in there, it's got sort of behaviors, it's got all, obviously the specific data, the relevant models, but it means that within their company, if they're building another piece of VR training, a lot of the groundwork has already been done, and they're only having to adapt then the new set of processes in that training in order to build it. That brings development time down, and it also gives a far more standardized experience to the employees, meaning when people are actually getting trained, it's far more in keeping with what the target is giving them a very sort of uniform, identical experience. So they're a great example of that actually, who have moved well beyond the proof of concept. Looking at it a slightly different angle actually is Linda Gass, who we work very closely with as well. So in a very similar situation to Volkswagen, they have customers across the globe. The difference being is they're not delivering a consumer product, they're delivering gas plants, but a far more industrial scale product. But that doesn't mean that the actual need or the relevance of VR is any different at all. It completely is. They are using it for training people, for example, in gas plants, and you can see here a collection of health and safety modules that are within our portal, which is a distribution platform that we deliver to them. And again, for them, in terms of how can they scale, they needed a platform and a tool that would allow them to control what went to the various customers, to the various locations, wherever they may be, but also then who would have access to it, data security, who would not have access to it, that's equally relevant, whether there were subgroups within there that they could then set up to control that people, for example, in specific roles needed certain health and safety training, whereas others maybe didn't. So they've, again, looked at a tool that's allowed them to scale with flexibility. So they've actually, been able to completely control the rollout through using the portal. So they're both great examples, and it's very different use cases. Like I say, Volkswagen in that sense, in our work with them, has been very much about content creation and standardizing and scaling that. Whereas Linda's actually been very much about content distribution and how, again, you can control and scale that efficiently by choosing the correct tools that help them to do that. So with that in mind, I'm just going to pass back to Guillaume, who's going to wrap up the conversation today before we move into some questions and answers with everybody.
Exactly. Thank you, Graham. So we believed it was important to wrap it up in a key learnings or key findings from our experience. So the key message is really to switch from proof of concept to proof of value. Proof of value is the way that will allow you to have a bulletproof file with a ROI, with a risk mitigation, with change management, so that you can push the project of scaling. In a sense, if your project is a VR project, you need to switch it to a business optimization project with clear business goals. if your project is a VR project to create VR, you're probably trying to show that you can put your factory or your machines or your operating modes within VR. But people have been there before, and it's doable. There's no technical block point here. So you need to switch to a business optimization project where you will look for business optimization KPIs. Like it can be many KPIs, depends on your case, of course, but it can be productivity in training. Switch your training time from 6 months to 3 months, divided by 2. If we're talking about 1,000 people, can have a big return on investment. Can be capitalization of your knowledge, because sometimes your knowledge is on the factory floor, and with turnover, with people going in retirement, you have a loss of productivity because you are losing the competencies. So capitalization of competencies can be a very good business objective. Can be also an operational objective, like reducing your mean time to repair or your first time fix rate, because you will get the people more up to speed on competencies. So these are the kind of KPIs you need to look. Switch your VR project to a business optimization project. And that second thing is also that make sure that VR, virtual reality, has a clear added value in these objectives. To be a little bit provocative, if you can do it with pen and papers, stick to pen and papers. It will be cheaper than VR. Make sure that you're using VR for the right reasons. VR is very good to put people in virtual situation with digital twin of your factory, so you can simulate a situation where you have safety involved, where you have complex machine involved, where you have machines that are not available. Like, for example, electrical transformer. You cannot train an electrical transformer that needs to have an uptime of 99.99%. So in that cases, VR is very, very effective. But you need to make sure that VR is used for the right thing in your project. Third point is that you select the tools, the partners, the competencies that help you scale, meaning that they have the segment knowledge, they have the segment expertise. If you're doing a marketing project, look for marketing experts that knows VR for sure, but VR is a technology and it adapts to the purpose you want to do. If it's for marketing, look for marketing experts that knows VR. If you are looking for training, or if you are looking for industry things, look for people that knows the industry and know your segment, and tools that are also in this segment. Look for low-code platform if you need, I would say, autonomy. If you need autonomy and long-term support, it's obvious that you will need to go for low-code platform and long-term support. And last point is to gear up and change management methodology. Don't forget the 3 area of people, process, and tools, because if your project is a business optimization or a company transformation project, it will be successful if you take care of people, of processes, and tools, as Graham rightly mentioned just before. So that's it for the wrap up. So we can start with the questions. I see we have a few questions there. Maybe I can hand over the first one to you, Graham. We have a question from Christian, which is, yes, very special, and there is no way to check always for return on investment because it's a new technology. How to do?
I would be slightly provocative. I would almost disagree with that slightly. Of course, it's a completely new invest, but you're having to look at what it's trying to achieve. And in that situation, you're going to be replacing training. So what's the cost of your training? What are the outputs of your training? And how do you define those KPIs normally? And how does that stack up against VR? And that's normally quite an easy task to do. You've got a very easy set of defined costs. So rather than looking at it in isolation as a project, is looking at what you're trying to solve, what business goals or business cost targets you're trying to solve, or what you're trying to replace with it. And that will give you a very easy method for comparison, I think. I don't know if you want to add to that, Guillaume.
Yeah, you're right. No, you said it. Yeah, I think VR is new technology, that's for sure. It's new, but the problem you need to solve is are old. Meaning it's always the same problems. You want to optimize, you want to do it cheaper, you want to do it faster, you want to do it better. So look at the problem you want to solve, and the problem will help you to define the ROI, not VR. VR is a technology, so you can use VR or any technology. Technology doesn't define the problem that it solves. So yeah, I 100% agree on what you say, Graham. And thanks again, Christian, for the question. We have a few more questions from Shanesia. Due to the pandemic and the crisis, our budget is too constrained. Is VR expensive to set up?
Is it expensive to set up? It doesn't have to be, actually. I think you can actually do it very efficiently. If we look at the costs over recent years, actually, it's tumbled. If you were to go back 5 years, you'd need to buy a high-end headset and a high-end computer to run VR, and actually you can do it far more cost efficiently now. So we hear it a lot, by the way, the pandemic challenge, that budgets are constrained. One of the ways we try to look at it, and we discuss it with our customers too, is that budgets are tight now, and we all know why, and it's tough reasons. But actually, by engaging and investing in VR now, you're actually making yourself stronger. You're going to come out of the whole of the current situation far more strongly. And in the meantime, you're actually going to save money. You're going to improve your efficiency. So again, to be slightly provocative, it's almost, in some situations, it's can you afford not to do it, rather than can you afford to do it. It's actually, by not doing it, you're costing yourself more money and you're losing the potential to really improve your business. So it's a tough time, we know that, but I don't think that should be an inhibiting factor in that kind of situation. So I don't know what you think or want to add to that, Guillaume.
Again, I agree, Graham. I think how many companies now today can say we don't need to digitalize our business? I believe that's 99% of executive committees are thinking about how do we digitalize our business, meaning how do we add more services, how do we connect, how do we have a data strategy, and so on and so on. So my point is not to say we need to do VR for the sake of VR. The thing is, don't look at what it costs, look at the complete picture, what it costs for sure, but what it will bring back. There's always budget for sure, but it's used for other things. If you have a strong business case, and let's say if your return on invest is in less than 18 months or 12 months, even more, in 12 months, you pay back your investment in less than a year. So if your business case is that strong, there's a high chance you will be able to convince an executive committee, your finance manager, your CFO about going forward. And I think that's the key part. It's not about the cost, it's about the return on invest. For sure, to climb the mountain, you need to start with the first small steps. So you will not start with spending 10 million euros on an activity. But if your business plan is clear, and if you go with proof of value that shows that you get the value and you minimize the risk, there's a higher chance that you will convince your executive committee, and that's the key point. That's the key point.
Yeah.
So we have few more minutes for some more questions. One other question, Graham, for you. There are so many VR solution platforms and providers. How can I choose the one that fits me?
Oh, good question, actually. Good question.
Yeah,
and I'll try and say this totally neutrally as well. So of course I'm keen to push the products of my company, but actually neutrally, you really need to look at who has experience in what you're trying to achieve. So every single platform provider and partner offers something different. So it's looking at for ones with experience in your sector, in your area, and ones whose products align with what you're trying to achieve. Now, I've been talking already about flexible, scalable, etc. And if that's what you're looking for, then that's brilliant. But potentially that's not the case actually. So potentially you'll go down a different path. But it's really understanding what each of the companies specialize in and following up from there. You probably want to add to that, Guillaume.
Yeah, I think there's a high chance that your company already have a purchasing department with a selection process. And I believe everything is there. Everything is there because in the selection process of your purchasing department, there's all the methodology to select usually providers. Are they here for the long-term support? Are they on the right price? Do they have the right competencies? Do they have the right expertise? And so on and so on. There's no difference between choosing a provider for something than choosing a provider for VR. I believe that the mistake would be to say it's different, so I change my provider selection methodology. So I'll go with another kind of supplier that doesn't fit my my company profile or my business objective profile. So I believe the answer is already in your company. And the best answer is to look for the same principles that you would select a provider for other topics. Two other questions. Yes, I think we have time for two other questions before we wrap it up. Many thanks for your questions, everybody. We see there's a lot of interest. Another question. I'm not sure if I should do AR, augmented reality, or VR. What are the technical specificities of each technology?
Do you want to take that one first, Guillaume? Then I'll go after you. Go for it.
Yep. I'll go first. I think if you're not sure if you want to go with AR or VR, you need to test both because they are not they are, even if on the technology side they are a little bit connected, on the use case side and on the return on invest side, they are completely different. So if you're not sure, I would urge you to test both and to get an idea of what they are standing for and what the usage. Because you will very quickly see that AR will have a lot of value in operations on the factory floor, while VR will have a lot of value in training, in design review, more in the office, I would say. And both will have completely different, I would say, leverage on value creation. So there's no I would say incompatibility. You can do both, or you can do neither. But for sure, both are here to stay and will most probably bring you value in your company, especially in industrial and manufacturing companies. Do you want to add to that, Graham?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been asked this quite a few times over the years, including by journalists as well, and it's always a funny question away. So what's better, AR or VR? And the answer is, well, they're both great. Actually, it's not one's better. It's exactly as you say there. It depends on the situation and what's appropriate. VR will absolutely solve the situations where you're actually going to be gaining from not having the real world around you, where you want to create maybe say a hypothetical experience. Let me give you an example. If you're training, for example, people who work on an aircraft, but in order to train them, you need an aircraft on the ground, which costs an absolute fortune because it only makes money whilst flying. So actually, by doing that in VR, you can create the illusion they're on that and train those people. Then VR is obviously a smart thing to do. Or if you're training in something where you maybe want some more contextual information, so you're looking at real world objects, then of course it's AR. And I think as time's moving on, and we head a bit into the buzzwords here, so XR and mixed reality, you name it, they are very related and very aligned, and there's going to be elements of both coexisting anyway. So I think most importantly is look at this problem you're trying to solve and then think about it. It's not a case of, is AR better for my company, is VR? They're both great, but really address it on a problem, or problem's the wrong word maybe, on a situation by situation basis. Yeah.
Thank you, Graham. Last question from the panel is, it's a very good one. Thanks. An average VR training application costs today between 40 kilo euros to 80 kilo euros when done by an agency. My management will not buy in. How much money can I save on this cost if I optimize the pipeline? Is there any numbers out there?
There are numbers actually. I'm trying to think what I can say and share from my side. Basically, I mean, this is the whole ethos of our creator tool, is that once you've done a lot of the hard work once, you only have to do it once. So actually then you can, each additional piece will scale again and again and again. We see over time that means at least a circa 50% reduction, but it's tough to put it into dollar value without knowing exactly length of piece, complexity, etc., etc. How about from your side, Guillaume? You may have some real examples there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, but I have to disagree with the introduction of the question. A VR training application doesn't cost 40K to 80K euros. It depends where you are. If you start, if it's your first VR application, if it's in your proof of value, might be the cost, yes. If you're scaling, your VR application might cost few euros or even zero if we do not consider the time of internal people doing it, right? Zero in terms of expense. Why that? Because if you go to scale, you will most probably have to ask yourself the questions on how do I make sure that if I'm able to generate 100 trainings a year, 100 VR content a year, an efficient way. If you go down this path, for sure you will have to select the right tools that doesn't need a lot of technological expertise, and that your people will be able to use, and so that they will be able to start with existing 3D content, existing trainings, and derive from this and create training content for a few hours time, meaning the cost is very, very low. And this we can see this happening in methods. For example, when you change the production line, you want to train your the workers to manufacture, to do their operation, and you need your method engineer to update the VR training just in a few hours, and that's possible if you choose the right production pipeline. So I believe I answered the question in saying, okay, do we have numbers in how we can optimize? We can optimize a lot. It depends on your content. It depends on your 3D, patrimoine, your 3D available files for sure. But it can get down to a few hours per VR training. So practically nothing.
Yeah. Awesome.
I believe we have no other questions, and we're actually at 44 minutes, so right on time. We said 45 minutes for the webinar. So thank you very much, Graham. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. You. That was great.
Thank you very much to all the participants for your time, for your connection. Don't hesitate to reach out to Graham or to me if you have any other questions popping after the webinar. And do not hesitate also to connect on LinkedIn, so we can discuss further if needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many thanks. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.